Between the 17th and 19th centuries, the rugged valleys of the Western Himalayas became an unlikely incubator for exquisite miniature art in Indian history. But the paintings produced in these hills didn't follow a slow, steady path of improvement. Instead, the art underwent a sudden, extreme transformation that defied the expectations of historians for decades. The earliest prevailing aesthetic, known as the Basoli style, is striking in its simplicity. Artists used coarsely flamboyant, bold, flat colors to depict their subjects, like these stylized figures of Krishna and his companions. Contrast that with the later Congress style. The bold abstraction was replaced by refined naturalism and poetic lyricism, featuring deeply detailed landscapes, delicate architecture, and flush-cut compositions resembling a modern photograph. This shift raises a difficult question. How did isolated mountain courts leap from raw simplicity to such highly sophisticated realism? Early art historians tried to answer this by organizing the paintings geographically, sorting them into schools based purely on the specific mountain towns where they were discovered, places like Basoli, Guler, or Kangra. But these artworks rarely included dates, colophons, or clear inscriptions, leaving the timeline entirely to guesswork. When historians plotted these centers on a map, the result was a fractured timeline with massive jumps in stylistic evolution. The maps were complicated by shifting political boundaries, as territories expanded and contracted due to local conflicts. Geography was an unreliable tool for tracking this artistic evolution. To solve the puzzle, scholars needed a completely different historical framework. Scholar B.N. Goswami realized that to solve the puzzle, historians had to look past the shifting borders of kings and track the bloodlines of the artists themselves. The history of Pahari painting finally began to make sense when traced through one specific lineage, the family of Pandit Su and his sons Manaku and Ninsuk. Around the middle of the 18th century, a wave of new, highly detailed paintings arrived in the Pahari kingdoms, acting as a historical catalyst for change. While historians once assumed this shift meant outside artists migrated to the mountains, we now recognize that it was the physical paintings themselves, likely Mohilan style, that made the journey and exposed local artists to a new world of naturalism. The Su family studied these imports and merged this observational realism with their native flair for bold colors, bridging the gap between the older Basuholi era and the mature Congress style. These technical advancements allowed artists to translate the rich romantic and devotional poetry of India into a permanent visual language. Manaku's famed Gita Govinda series captured the divine, complex love story of Radha and Krishna, setting their romance against intensely detailed natural surroundings. They also drew heavily from the Ashtanayikas, poetic descriptions of 8 types of romantic heroines, the most dramatic being the Abhisadika Nayika. Depicting her required a specific, dangerous iconography, a steadfast woman braving a pitch-black night, murky rain clouds, and snake-infested forests to meet her beloved. This new visual vocabulary was finally sophisticated enough to capture profound human passion and divine romance on a single page. By the 1780s, the experimentation initiated by the Say family matured into its absolute peak, the celebrated Kangra style. This golden age was funded by King Sansar Chand, who used his immense political power to support a massive studio that drew talented artists from across neighboring territories. The studio produced a massive volume of work, creating idealized, near-photographic records of courtly life and festivals, populated by beautifully refined figures and faces. This era met an abrupt and violent end in 1805, when Gorkha forces besieged the Kangra fort, forcing King Sansar Chand to flee and scattering the artists to other regions. The history of Pahari miniature painting proves that artistic evolution is rarely dictated by lines on a map. Instead, it is carried forward by the resilient bloodlines of master artists who observe the world and quietly redraw the canvas of their time.